the remez, the drash, and the sod. The Hebrew interpretation of scriptures, the 4 levels of interpretation. The pashat is the plain sense. The remez, the hint. The drash, it can be an allegory. The sod is the deep mystical layer. It's called pardes, the acronym pardes. Pashat, remez, drash, sod. Can the sod contradict the pashat? They have to work in harmony. So if we're in exile and we're reading the book of Ephraim and we are looking at the so deep mystical level of scripture in regard to sacrifices to Yahweh, which are shalom offerings, because the language bears that up. Are we tracking? Mm-hmm. Which takes us back to Leviticus, Vayikra chapter 7, verse 11 through verse 21. That is the sod level. What we're dealing with in the book of Ephraim and the book of Philipsia, we had better make sure it lines up with the pashat, the plain sense of the shalom offering. Because we are living now within the so deep mystical revelation of having seen the work of redemption, which in the Torah was building to what we are now living in. Many people don't realize that the Brit Hadashah is the so deep mystical level of the pashat that appears many times in the Torah. So we need to understand the pashat so we can understand how to live in the sod. You can't just live in the sod because you end up making it up and spiritualizing everything. But the spiritual comes from the plain sense. They work in harmony together. That is the grounding of our faith. That's what Torah does. It teaches you how to live the Brit Hadashah in the real world. It's not just conceptual thought out here, but it's making it real that you walk it out each and every day with your friends, with your neighbors, with your family, with your wife, with your brethren. That's why so many brethren are lost and hurt and aching and thirsty and hungry because they're living a spiritual life that they don't know how to walk out in the pashat, the plain sense of the physical realm that we live in day to day. And that's what the Torah teaches you to do. It keeps you safe and teaches you how to walk upright before Yahweh. They all work together. You can't just live in the sod. You have to work within the pashat, the remez, the drash, and the sod, and they all work in unity together. So, to get harmonious, let's finish up in Vayikra chapter 7, verse 11. Leviticus chapter 7, verse 11. And this is the Torah of the sacrifice of Shalom. Shalom offerings which one shall offer to Yahweh. If he offers it for a hodu, then he shall offer with the sacrifice of hodu unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil, and cakes mixed with oil of fine flour and fried. Matzah. We have to understand that our walk has to be unleavened. It must be an unleavened walk. We cannot have the doctrines and dogmas of men in our walk. It has to be unleavened. And what is matzah bread? It's that thin, unleavened bread that is pierced and striped. Correct? It is the body that is pierced and striped that you are to eat of. So you have to understand the composition of the matzah. That's why we teach the whole wheat unleavened bread, understanding the composition of Moshiach's body, that he is 100% Yahweh, 0% man, cloaked in humanity, but not of humanity's origins. His flesh is from the Shamayim, not from the dust. A human being, as defined by Scripture, comes from the ground, the dust. We have to understand the composition of the bread. Otherwise you end up in doctrines leavened by men, and you end up with a God-man deity. And Yahweh says, no, you shall not offer human sacrifice. It is an abomination. We have to understand the composition of the matzah, the pierced and striped matzah, if we're going to proceed forth and get out of the doctrines and leaven of men. Those were the greatest debates the first 200 years after the work of redemption was called Christology. What was the composition of the Christ? It's called Christology. The one that won out isn't the truth. You have to go back to find the truth, because the one that everyone practices today is a leavened doctrine. That's why we go back here and we see it's an unleavened cake. We must understand the teaching of the whole wheat and unleavened bread. Verse 13, beside the cakes he shall offer for this offering leavened lechem with the sacrifice of hodu for his shalom offerings. And of it he shall offer one out of the whole offering to Yahweh, and it shall be the Cohen's that sprinkles the blood for the peace shalom offerings. And the flesh of the sacrifice of his shalom offerings for hodu shall be eaten the same day that it was offered. The meat, many brethren don't realize that the meat sometimes would be eaten by the Kohanim, the priest, the giver, and invited. And their guests would come to the feast and they would